Today is Friday, June 5th, and this is Sundry News. We start off today with the Daily Wire. For some reason, this didn't come yesterday, but we have it today. From the Daily Wire, Candace Owens. I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. I read this yesterday. It's good. Watch. Girls cleaning BLM graffiti off government building scolded for misusing white privilege. Oh, brother. Drew Brees caves, asks for forgiveness for saying Americans should respect the flag. It is so sad. Megan Rapinoe, John Legend, Lizzo, more celebs sign open letter to defund police. Good idea. That's just brilliant. Kanye West donates $2 million to families of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. That makes sense in at least one of those cases. Look at this, since I talked about it. In an explosive 18-minute video posted on YouTube Thursday, conservative commentator Candace Owens explains why she does not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. During her at times impassioned video post, Owens, who is African American, criticizes what she describes as the African American community catering to the bottom denominator of our society by demanding support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. The holding up of Floyd as a martyr for Black America, she suggests, is an example of this trend that she forcefully rejects. In the video, Owens highlights Floyd's criminal record, particularly a 2007 armed robbery of a woman's home in Houston for which Floyd was convicted in 2009 and served 5 years in prison. While the media has generally portrayed Floyd as having started a new life since his 5-year stint in prison, Owens points to his alleged attempt to use a counterfeit bill which prompted the ultimately fatal arrest, and 2 autopsies indicating he had drugs in his system as evidence suggesting he had not fully reformed. Owens repeatedly stresses that by highlighting Floyd's criminal record, she is not attempting to justify former Officer Derek Chauvin's actions, which she thoroughly condemns. Rather, she is arguing that Floyd should not be held up as some form of martyr or role model for the Black community. The desire to post the message, Owens begins, has been weighing very heavily on my heart and on my mind, but she held back because there are so many emotions and so much pressure for me to go with the popular opinion about who George Floyd was, and sometimes it can be difficult when there were just so many external pressures to say what you believe. And this was an instance where I felt like my silence would have been better in the beginning. But the more that I would think about it, I realized that we are being sold a lot of lies at the detriment to the Black community, at the detriment to the white community, and at the detriment to America as a whole, she continued. So I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. Citing conservative African-American author and columnist Shelby Steele, Owens says the Black community is unique in that we are the only people that fight and scream and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. While she strongly condemns Chauvin's actions and says the family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died, Owens states, I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer. For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight, and it is something that I find to be despicable, and there's something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I am not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from Black liberals and Black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be Black, she says. And I wondered about that too, about how they turn criminals into heroes overnight. Just because something bad happened to a person and they died doesn't mean that they were right in what they were doing beforehand. Doesn't mean that they were perfect role models, as she says. Yahoo Sports, read and react. Trending. I should do less talking and more listening. Drew Brees apologizes for comments on protests. Yeah. I mean, yeah, right with the doing less talking thing, apparently. that doesn't mean that he's going to change his mind. That just means that he's not going to voice his opinions. So you could just think that he's thinking with you and really isn't. And honestly, that's for the best. That used to sort of be the way it was before everybody could put their thoughts out onto the internet for everybody else to see. LaMelo Ball among riskiest players in the NBA draft. President Cuban, Mavs owner weighed a 2020 campaign. Georgia Tech Sports will take November 3rd off to allow players to vote. Okay, cool. The NBA is going to Disney World by Jay Busby. Morning, friends. Hope you're well as we head into the weekend. NBA owners have formally presented their plan for restarting the 2019-20 season, and it's going to be fascinating as hell. 22 teams will be invited to Camp NBA in Orlando. The 16 teams currently holding playoff slots, plus 6 more with a shot at playing their way in. There will be an 8-game regular season, and then the playoffs begin, with the possibility of a play-in series if the 8th and 9th seeded teams are within 4 games of one another. That's going to be glorious chaos, and as a basketball fan, I love it. You know what's going to be not so glorious chaos? The prospect of testing and containing an estimated 1,000-plus players, coaches, team officials, families, service staff, etc., in Orlando. Yes, COVID-19 may have left the front pages for now, but it's still very much a public health threat. The question is if it ever really was, honestly. What happens when a player tests positive? How many players on a team would have to test positive in order to shut down that team entirely? The NBA hasn't yet disclosed those details, probably because it's still working on them. Another element to consider, the domino impact of all this. The 2020-21 NBA season is now tentatively scheduled to start December 1st, a month later than usual and less than 2 months after the end of the current season. Will that push next year's playoffs later into the summer? Will teams have to tighten up off days or shorten seasons? Will players that decide to play in next summer's Olympics, don't say it, just collapse into puddles from exhaustion? Don't say what? Yes, this is not unlike putting on your parachute after you've jumped out of the plane, but the simple announcement that basketball's coming back is enough to warm the hearts of fans who enjoyed The Last Dance and endless finals replays but are ready for, real games. Plus, we get to see more. We get to see more LeBron, more Kawhi, more Giannis, more Zion. Alas, no more Vince Carter and no KD at all. This is going to be one of the most intense, remarkable stretches in NBA history, and it's anyone's call as to who's going to end up the champion. Bonus, the should a championship come with an asterisk question will keep Sports Talk Radio humming all summer long. For now, we've got plenty of questions with absolutely no answers, but at long last we can start asking them again. Schwab, how will NFL games look, feel different with no fans? Hopefully better than wrestling matches look and feel different. The NFL has to get a handle on protest angles before season. Yeah, probably. That's from Wetzel. From Eisenberg, how Mikey Williams, 15, could shake up college hoops. You cover the new guy. How tough could he be? With his season likely over, the Atlanta Hawks' Trae Young suited up for some friendly basketball in Oklahoma, and, well, let's spare a thought for whoever had to guard him. Woo. Thanks for reading today's issue of Read and React. Follow Yahoo Sports on social. The Daily Yahoo. Ex-Minneapolis cop told other officers, "You shouldn't do this," during George Floyd's arrest, lawyer says. 2 of the former Minneapolis officers charged in George Floyd's death tried to warn their fellow officers during the arrest, their attorneys said. In that case, I think verbal warnings were just not quite enough. Outdoor Swiss hotel rooms, quote, rooms, although those aren't quotes, those are apostrophes, give new meaning to light and airy. Two Swiss conceptual artists are offering 7 open-air hotel rooms this summer across a performance space encompassing eastern Switzerland and Liechtenstein. The services of a white-gloved, modern butler, often a local farmer in jeans and Wellington boots, are included in the conceptions. Fun. What do you do when it rains? Canadian Housing Agency draws fire for tightening mortgage rules. From Bloomberg. Canada's Housing Agency announced it will tighten mortgage qualification rules for high-risk borrowers, a controversial move that could curb credit in an economy trying to emerge from its deepest contraction of the post-war era. The state-owned Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp., which offers default loans? I mean, that doesn't sound too unreasonable. If they're high-risk borrowers, you want to make sure that you get returns on your loans. While we #stay home, you don't have to feel alone. We're all in this together. Find helpful tips to #stay calm, #stay connected, and #stay active at alonetogether.com now. That was obnoxious. Outpouring of rage over George Floyd killing tests limits of U.S. police tactics. Responses by law enforcement authorities in the U.S. Capitol and in Flint, Michigan, to protests over the police killing of George Floyd illustrated starkly contrasting approaches to handling angry crowds on American streets and repairing relations with grieving communities. Sheriff Christopher Swanson of Michigan's something blah 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 said so-and-so. UK opens talks with Huawei rival as Johnson confronts China. From Bloomberg. The UK is in talks with a rival to Huawei Technologies company as Boris Johnson... Is it company? Co is company. As Boris Johnson's officials revise the British government's stance toward China in the wake of the global coronavirus pandemic. Officials spoke with Japanese technology company NetCorp in May. Cool. Good for Boris Johnson. MP cradles baby while speaking in House of Commons debate. MP Stella Creasy held her baby daughter in her arms while contributing to a debate in the House of Commons on June 4th. The Member of Parliament for Walthamstow was taking part in a debate on abortion regulation in Northern Ireland. Okay, I have to click on that. Please tell me she was against it while she was holding her own baby. What? Oh, I guess she was, since you took it down. Okay. Get the upper hand on online threats with premium protection. Malwarebytes Premium detects, wipes out, and blocks viruses that many other antivirus programs may miss. Get 30 days for free now. What's hot? It's Yahoo Search. It's always Yahoo Search. Yahoo Search is what's hot. Cord blood banking, a local commercial plumber. All with Yahoo Search. Trending now is Gabrielle Union, because she's a fucking bitch. Conan O'Brien. Anel Bueno. Don't know who that is. Halle Berry. 2020 Hyundai Kona. Silver Eagle Coins. Mariah Carey. Al Knox, cheapest outdoor furniture. Matt Damon. Thank you, Yahoo. 1440. Good morning. It's Friday, June 5th, and we're covering unemployment figures, Tiananmen Square vigils, and research into those born prematurely. Have feedback? Need to know. Floyd memorialized. George Floyd, whose death at the hands of police last week catalyzed global protests, was memorialized yesterday in Minneapolis. Among a number of high-profile attendees, Floyd's brother recalled him as being like a general. Everyone wanted to greet him. Okay. Scott Hagan, president of North Central University. I'm just saying there's probably a lot more to being a general than having everybody say hey to you. Just saying. Scott Hagan, president of North Central University, where the service was held, said the school would establish a scholarship in Floyd's name and challenged other universities to do the same. What? Did he go to that college? Did he? Did he go to college? Protests were calmer again last night, and confrontations between police and protesters have decreased over the past few days. Good. However, officials expect sizable crowds across several major cities tomorrow. In particular, large demonstrations are expected in Washington, D.C., where hundreds of National Guard troops from around the country have arrived to support local police. Separately, the New York Times defended its decision to publish an op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton, arguing for the deployment of active duty troops to help quell protests. Good for you, New York Times. Try to be objective, yes. At least try. The piece refers to the Insurrection Act of 1807, which President Trump has threatened to invoke, allowing the use of federal forces to enforce laws. As of this morning, the act had not formally been invoked, and active duty troops have not been deployed, though some were relocated near Washington, D.C. Yesterday's memorial was the first in a string of events honoring Floyd, who will be buried in a private service in Houston Tuesday. See, this is exactly what Candace Owens was talking about. This is not necessary. What did he do to deserve all of this? He didn't do anything to deserve all of this, is the answer. He died. In a horrible way. Yes, it should not have happened. But that's it. Just because he died after being kneeled on by a white guy. What you're doing right now is you're honoring the skin color of the person most likely responsible for his death. 43 million jobs. Nearly 1.9 million Americans made initial unemployment claims last week, bringing the total number of new claims made during the pandemic to almost 43 million. While marking the ninth straight week of declining job losses, the figure is still historically large. Before the pandemic, the U.S. was averaging 200,000 initial claims per week. Analysts say the high numbers reflect the cascading effect of the coronavirus-induced economic crisis. Coronavirus-induced. I think you mean panic-induced. I think you mean overreaction-induced. I think you mean fucking stupidity-induced economic crisis. The only crisis that we have had this year is the economy crisis. That's it. Possibly now the riot crisis. But, Continuing claims, workers who have been collecting unemployment for at least 2 weeks, a clearer picture of current unemployment, rose by 650,000 to 21 million total. Almost 15% of the U.S. labor force currently collects unemployment benefits, a number that does not include self-employed and gig economy workers currently covered under a temporary relief program. The May jobs report due out today is expected to show unemployment near 20%. Separately, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the administration's top expert on the crisis, said local officials should consider how to reopen schools for the fall. Oh, really? They should start considering that now? Fauci said whether any individual school should reopen must depend on local infection rates. I don't know why they listen to him so much. He's not an elected official. He's one of those experts, yes, one of those experts that people were supposed to be listening to, but not actually allowing to make any big decisions. You listen to them and then you use your own common sense and knowledge of your country and your economy to figure out the best course of action for everybody, not just the old and sick. The U.S. had reported 1.87 million coronavirus cases, with 108,211 deaths as of this morning. Deaths rose by 1%, another 1%, since yesterday morning. See the moving 3-day average here. Well, the moving 3-day average is 1% every fucking day. So the average of that is what, 1? Have more questions? Check out our expert-curated coronavirus resource page. Tiananmen Vigil. Tens of thousands of protesters in Hong Kong broke through police barricades surrounding the city's Victoria Park yesterday, defying a ban to demonstrate on the 31st anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. While the 1989 government crackdown on student activists is virtually unacknowledged in the mainland, Hong Kong has held annual memorials since its occurrence. The ban on the vigil was the latest in a crackdown by Beijing over the region, which has operated under a semi-autonomous governing structure since being returned by the British in 1999. Did they want to be returned? I've always wondered that. It follows a national security bill broadly outlining any activities considered seditious. 2 of Hong Kong's biggest banks announced support for the bill yesterday. The spirit of the original 1989 protests was captured by the iconic Tank Man, a single person who momentarily halted an advancing column of tanks. Watch the encounter here. And sometimes when I read about the riots they're having there, or protests, whatever, I'm sure their protests are probably less violent. But I read about this, and in my heart, I feel that I support them. But I read about the riots and some protests here, and in my heart, for the most part, I don't support it. And because there's a difference here. In Hong Kong, they want the freedoms that we already have here. They are trying to fight for and earn the freedoms that we have here that supposedly they were supposed to have there since they were supposed to be semi-autonomous. And here, it is different. For one thing, all of the bad behavior. People are being killed because you don't like that somebody was killed. Multiple people, multiple innocent people are being killed because you don't like that a criminal was killed. That's not right. That doesn't make sense. That's so stupid. And while we're on the subject, I don't believe that there's any sort of, extra training or whatever that's necessary. All these celebrities that are giving money for more training, or, corporations or whatever that are giving money for more training, that's not so much what's necessary. What's necessary is to just enforce already existing rules and laws about how to fucking treat people. Don't let them off easy when things go wrong, when things actually go wrong, when it really was a fucked up situation and it shouldn't have happened that way. Then don't let them off easy. When black people and when white people are killed, when Asian people are killed, I don't know if that ever happens. Do cops ever kill Asian people? I don't know. We never hear about it, so how the fuck would I know? And yes, accountability. Having accountability. Other officers have to keep other officers accountable. Officers have to keep each other accountable. Like, seriously so. Not just saying, hey, you shouldn't do this. That's what I'm saying. Stuck inside? It's time to escape. Escape the room, that is. But Puzzle Break isn't just any old escape room. It's a virtual escape room experience. Its real-time, live-streaming platform combines challenging puzzles, fun themes, teamwork, and brain power to create a unique social experience, all from the comfort of your own home. Sessions include live game operators to guide you through the fun, and you can easily play live with friends and family from anywhere in the world. It's perfect for corporate events, camps, schools, fundraisers, or just a night out or in. 1440 readers get an extra discount, $3 off per player with code 1440. Reserve your spot today and escape the room this weekend. Please support our sponsors while you are sacrificing your immune system to the gods of, social distancing? In the know. Sports, entertainment, and culture. NBA Board of Governors approves 22-team restart plan in 29-1 vote. The season is set to resume July 31st, with all games being played at Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Kanye West donates $2 million to families of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, and pays college tuition for Floyd's daughter. Oh, isn't that nice? That's in addition to the $2 million? Jeez. I don't know why they list the names in that order, honestly. Because the death of Breonna Taylor should be the most the most outrageous one. The one that people are most focused on should be that one. YouTube star Jake Paul, who has 20 million subscribers on his channel, charged with trespassing at an Arizona mall that was being looted following protests last week. Science and technology. New imaging technique allows scientists to see the individual atoms of proteins for the first time. Cryo-electron microscopy can allow unprecedented understanding of how single proteins function. What are proteins anyway? Top medical journal The Lancet retracts study that raised safety concerns around the use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19. I'm so glad that they're putting this here. Follows a separate study showing the antimalarial drug does not prevent coronavirus infections any better than a placebo. Report says Apple established a robotics lab to automate its production lines in 2012, but abandoned it in 2018 after being unable to match the skill and efficiency of human workers. Okay. Why is that being talked about now? Business and markets. Facebook to block ads from state-controlled media starting this summer. Will also label ads and posts for increased transparency. Okay. That sounds fine, but I'm sure there's going to be some sort of a flaw in practice. Business intelligence platform ZoomInfo soars 62% on first day of trading. Marks the first major tech initial public offering, IPO, since the pandemic began in March. Since the panic began in March. A payroll retailer, Gap, reports nearly $1 billion quarterly loss from panic store closures. Stock down more than 5%. Workplace communication platform Slack delivers 50% revenue growth over last year, but stock falls over 15% in after-hours trading. Politics and world affairs. Michael White, a U.S. Navy veteran detained in Iran since 2018, will be released. In exchange, the U.S. will let an Iranian-American scientist visit family in Iran. Cool. Russia declares state of emergency after giant diesel oil spill at a remote Arctic power plant. Spill releases 17,000 tons of oil into a river, nearly half the size of the 1989 Exxon Valdez ocean spill. That's a fuck ton of oil. Maybe that'll help with the oil crisis, with the prices. Maybe. Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte set to sign anti-terrorism bill that critics say would classify dissent as terrorism. Bill would allow authorities to detain police without warrants and arrest those criticizing people. Authorities to detain people without warrants and arrest those criticizing the government on social media. Poor Philippines. You poor, poor Filipinos. In depth. The argument for de-escalation from 538. Qualitative evidence suggests de-escalation strategies reduce violence during protests. So whatever happened to the model of negotiated management? This sounds interesting. De-escalation keeps protesters and police safer. Departments respond with force anyway. Oh, so we're crapping on police departments. This article was published in partnership with the Marshall Project, a nonprofit news organization covering the U.S. criminal justice system. Alright, well, this looks long. So, I will just share the link. Michigan underwater. From Bridge. 2 heirs bought a handful of Michigan dams as tax shelters. After years of ignoring regulator warnings to increase capacity, one of them burst. What's this? Read the latest from Matt Walsh. Biden's Floyd funeral campaign stunt exposes the elitist left's lies. Okay. What campaign stunt? Just the fact that he went? The Daily Wire reports that Joe Biden is expected to attend George Floyd's funeral. Biden, however, is not expected to attend the funerals of any of the innocent Americans murdered during riots over the past 2 weeks. Yeah, good point. Nor will he be attending the funerals of the black men killed by other black men every day in cities across the country. Floyd's funeral provides the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee a political opportunity that the others do not. And that, of course, is all this is. Biden is using Floyd's dead body as a campaign platform, just as he used Floyd's dying words as a fundraising gimmick. It's crass, disgusting, and offensive, but that's not the most outrageous thing about this story. Here's what the article says. Joe Biden, the presumptive 2020 Democratic nominee, is expected to attend the funeral of George Floyd, the Minneapolis man whose death at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer sparked a week of anti-police brutality demonstrations across the country, according to a report from CNN. Plans are being discussed, but arrangements have not been finalized, the outlet said Wednesday, noting that while a spokesman for Biden's campaign refused to comment on the matter, an attorney for George Floyd's family, Ben Crump, told the network that Biden is expected to be in attendance. Floyd's funeral will be held in Houston, Texas next week and it is expected to draw hundreds, if not thousands, of attendees. There will be a public memorial service on Thursday in Minneapolis. And no social distancing. Hundreds, if not thousands, of attendees, some of them apparently flying in from around the country. Normally, there would be nothing outrageous about this, except that for the past 3 months, many Americans have not been able to attend the funeral services of their own family members due to COVID-19 restrictions. In most states, funeral attendance was capped at 10 or 15 people, and only graveside services were allowed. These are the guidelines still recommended by the CDC. In a few cases, large services were still held, but those events were widely condemned. And in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio issued enraged threats against religious Jews who dared conduct their normal funeral rituals for their deceased. Many people have died these past months, whether from COVID-19 or anything else. Were they less important than George Floyd? Less deserving of a proper send-off? What do we say to the many people who were not allowed to travel across state lines to bury their own grandparents, now that Joe Biden plans to fly across the country to attend the funeral of a man he's never met and whose name he didn't know until 2 weeks ago? I suppose to them we say whatever we say to the millions of Americans who lost their job or their business and were prevented from going to church and exercising their First Amendment rights, and were cited for going to the park or the beach, and were shamed and sometimes arrested for protesting these measures, yet now watch on TV as the very same elected leaders who imposed these ruinous policies came out in enthusiastic support of Black Lives Matter protesters. We say there are 2 laws in this country, one for you and another for the elites and those who have the right politics according to the elites. Do what you will with that information. For those who supported the lockdowns and now support the protesters who are violating it en masse, there are only 2 options. The first option is that they really believe what they say about the virus being exorbitantly lethal and contagious and about large gatherings being deadly vectors for this virus. They really believe that those who come together in large groups are killing themselves and their neighbors and their grandmas, along with the first responders and medical professionals who will have to come in contact with them as they die a hideously torturous death. If this is the case and they believed all of that and still believe it, then they are psychotics cheering as thousands of Americans, many of them black, commit mass suicide and genocide in one fell swoop. They do not actually think that Black Lives Matter because they are happy to see so many Black lives sacrificed for the sake of sending a political message. They think that the protesters are indeed killing Grandma, but they also think that it's okay to kill Grandma for a good cause. They are murderous, bloodthirsty maniacs. That's one option. The second option, and there is no third, is that they never actually believed what they said about the virus. All of that grandma killer stuff, all of that you must stay inside or millions will die stuff was a charade, an act meant to terrify and control the masses. They didn't think you were a suicidal nihilist for wanting to go to work, but they called you that anyway because they will say anything and use any scare tactic to achieve whatever end they desire. They are maybe not murderous and bloodthirsty, but they are godforsaken liars and tyrants who destroyed the economy and millions of lives and drove countless people to despair and suicide on knowingly fraudulent grounds. As I said, there is no third possibility, aside from perhaps a combination of options 1 and 2. So the only question left is, which is it? Good stuff. Very good. Back to 1440. Survival of the littlest. From Nature. Thanks to medical advances, survival rates for extremely premature babies, those born before 28 weeks, have never been higher. Researchers now have more data than ever on the long-term health impacts of early births. A change of scenery. Just because you're bored and stuck inside doesn't mean you can't enjoy being virtually stuck somewhere else. Introducing Puzzle Break's new virtual escape room experience. Get all the thrills of an escape room from the comfort of your own home and enjoy live sessions with your friends and family worldwide. Reconnect with loved ones with virtual escape rooms today and save $3 per player with code 1440. Book now. Etc. Watch a landslide in Norway sweep an entire neighborhood out to sea. Oh my. Scientists create a 3D map of a dinosaur skull. New Orleans restaurants to provide almost 2 million meals to vulnerable residents. Where are they going to get the money for that? It's not like people have been going out to eat for the past few months. From our partners, here's a way to earn $650 from your couch. Make introductions to your network as a side hustle. #ad. What is that about? Hunters. Let's open doors together. Startups need to get in the doors of large enterprises at startup speed. Insiders, connectors, and sales pros can get them there. Hunters puts them together. Become a hunter? I'm a startup. Okay, there you go. This bank will pay its new employees to delay their start date. Cool. 9-year-old Kenyan inventor wins award for his hand washing machine. Guesstimating how many people it took to build the pyramids. Guesstimating. How many people did it take to build the Great Pyramid? Given that some 4,600 years have elapsed since the completion of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the structure stands remarkably intact. It is a polyhedron with a regular polygon base. Its volume is about 2.6 million cubic meters, and its original height was 146.6 meters, including the lost pyramidion, or capstone. We may never know exactly how the pyramid was built, but even so, we can say with some confidence how many people were required to build it. We must start with the time constraint of roughly 20 years, the length of the reign of Khufu, the pharaoh who commissioned the construction. He died around 2530 BC. Herodotus, writing more than 21 centuries after the pyramid's completion, was told that that's 2530 years before Christ, by the way, was told that labor gangs totaling 100,000 men worked in 3-month spells a year to finish the structure in 20 years. In 1974, Kurt Mendelssohn, a German-born British physicist, put the labor force at 70,000 seasonal workers and up to 10,000 permanent masons. These are large overestimates. We can do better by appealing to simple physics. The potential energy of the pyramid, the energy needed to lift the mass above ground level, is simply the product of acceleration due to gravity, mass, and the center of mass, which in a pyramid is 1/4 of its height. The mass cannot be pinpointed because it depends on the specific densities of the Tura limestone and mortar that were used to build the structure. I am assuming a mean of 2.6 metric tons per cubic meter. Why are you assuming? Don't you know that when you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me? Hence a total mass of about 6.75 million metric tons. That means the pyramid's potential energy is about 2.4 trillion joules. To maintain his basal metabolic rate, a 70-kilogram, 154-pound man requires some 7.5 megajoules a day. Steady exertion will raise that figure by at least 30%. About 20% of that increase will be converted into useful work, which amounts to about 450 kilojoules a day. different assumptions are possible, but they would make no fundamental difference. Dividing the potential energy of the pyramid by 450 kilojoules implies that it took 5.3 million man-days to raise the pyramid. If a work year consists of 300 days, man-day, I like that. It's so sexist, man-day. What are the woman days? Do women have days? Woman day? No, they're man days. I know, I'm being silly. Whatever. If a work year consists of 300 days, that would mean almost 18,000 man years. Oh, there are man years! Which, spread over 20 years, implies a workforce of about 900 men. Sweat equity. Sheer human muscle can raise a great pyramid because most of the mass is near the bottom, and the work can be divided among thousands of people and distributed over decades. It was thus no great drain on national resources, and think of the spin-off effects. We should do that now. We should build pyramids now. Set all those rioters to work building pyramids. They would get a sense of accomplishment, and we would get pretty monuments to whatever their cause was. A similar number of workers might be needed to place the stones in the rising structure and then to smooth the cladding blocks. Many interior blocks were just rough cut. And in order to cut 2.6 million cubic meters of stone in 20 years, the project would have required about 1,500 quarrymen working 300 days a year, not man days, and producing 0.25 cubic meter of stone per capita. The grand total of the construction labor would then be some 3,300 workers. Even if we were to double that number to account for designers, organizers, and overseers, and for labor needed for transport, tool repair, the building and maintenance of on-site housing, and cooking and laundry work, the total would be still less than 7,000 workers. During the time of the pyramid's construction, the total population of the late Old Kingdom was 1.5 million to 1.6 million people, and hence such a labor force would not have been an extraordinary imposition on the country's economy. The challenge was to organize the labor, plan an uninterrupted supply of building stones, and provide housing, clothing, and food for labor gangs on the Giza site. In the 1990s, archaeologists uncovered a cemetery for workers and the foundations of a settlement used to house the builders of the two later pyramids at the site, indicating that no more than 20,000 people lived there, that an additional 2 pyramids were built in rapid succession at the Giza site, for Khafre, Khufu's son, starting at 2520 BC, and for Menkaure, starting 2490 BC, shows how quickly early Egyptians mastered the building of pyramids. The erection of those massive structures became just another series of construction projects for the Old Kingdom's designers, managers, and workers. If you build things, it becomes easier to build things, a useful lesson for those who worry about the sorry state of our infrastructure. Cool. This robot will cook you the perfect omelet. By whose standards? The obvious result of wearing a hummingbird helmet. Okay. Clickbait. It's been a tough year so far. Enjoy this giggling fox. Oh, I love foxes. Okay, this time I'm clicking on the clickbait. Clicking on the clickbait. I hate myself. Please take a break from scrolling to enjoy this.
Hi. Where's Finnegan? Where is he? There he is. Oh my goodness. Let's go see Finnegan. Oh my gosh, it's Finnegan Fox. Hi. Why didn't you come when I called you? I was calling. Did you know I was going to come over here? Did you? How did you know? How did you know? Because I love you so much. Yeah?
Are we sure that fox?
See? Hey, Dick.
Are we sure that fox was giggling? Are we sure he wasn't in any distress? That was adorable. I love foxes. I hope he was not in distress. History book. U.S. moves off gold standard, 1933. That was a mistake. Bobby Kennedy is shot at campaign rally, dies next day, 1968. Rest in peace, Ronald Reagan, 2004. Rest in peace, science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, 2012. Rest in peace, fashion designer Kate Spade, 2018. Okay, they quoted Kate Spade. If you're as honest and fair as you can be, not only in business but in life, things will work out. All right, that's a nice quote. They could have quoted Ronald Reagan. They could have quoted a Kennedy. They could have quoted Ray Bradbury. But they quoted Kate Spade. Okay. That's all for today. Have a lovely afternoon.